Welcome to another episode of Anti Moonboy News. This is episode 22. Let's get right to it. And we're going to start off with the Superchats. You can donate at xmrchat.com/Xenu. And what I do is I read off these Superchats at the beginning of each episode. And we got two this week. The first one's from Cyrus. He donates 0.0249 XMR. He says, subscriber to Anti Moonboy, good to see him on the show. Question, where can I find more Monerochan art? Well, thank you, Cyrus. So what he's referring to is Monerotalk. I was on Monerotalk this week, which I'll talk about in a second. But during the program, there must have been some technical issue. I don't know what happened exactly, but Cyrus had asked this question about Monerochan, and unfortunately, it did not make it to the program because we couldn't find the super chat. But we got it here, so I can answer it. Yeah, so Monerochan art, for those who don't know, I'm actually, I have been pretty involved with making a lot of the Monerochan artwork throughout the years. I was in those early threads on Bisq, and I commissioned actually quite a bit of artwork. And the reason being is because Monerochan, really is such a fun, kind of grassroots meme that we can, kind of all rally behind. That's why for my videos, I use a custom Monerochan for the thumbnails, just because it's really cute and you can have funny reactions, images, and things like that. So I'm probably going to eventually release those as like a download pack, by the way. I haven't gotten around to that. I should write that down, actually. But anyways, for the Monerochan art that you yourself can download right now, go to monerochan.art. That is the URL, monerochan.art. And that is the Monerochan Art Fund. I helped with this. I didn't run it for what it's worth. There was another Anon out there. But there's tons of original content that we commissioned on there, including some artwork that I helped with. For example, the Grand Theft Auto parody, I worked on that. That's probably my favorite Monerochan creation. I think it's pretty fun. And there's a lot of other cool stuff as well, including some thoughts that we had cosplay as Monerochan. Yeah, so it's fun stuff. And unfortunately, this bull run, it looks like Monerochan art has kind of died down a little bit. I don't know why necessarily. I guess kind of the it's not as hype as it used to be, maybe. But I have been seeing a decent amount of AI slop created, which isn't really the same. So maybe that's why. Maybe it's just mostly AI stuff, and AI, at least previously, wasn't as good. But now that AI is better, maybe we can have some new artwork created. Now, on the Monerochan art website, there is a link to a Matrix group chat. It's kind of dead, but if you go there and ask around, you can get people to comment there, and they can, provide you with whatever AI models they're running, or maybe they have folders of Monerochan that they have saved that they can upload for you. Likewise, there is a Monerochan subreddit. I think that's still active. You can go there, and you can also go on 4chan on the Bisq board. There is probably an XMR general that is up. You can go there and ask if someone has a folder that you can download. So there's a bunch of different options for you. You can also probably just like search, images on like a search engine and find some as well. There's a lot of Anons with a lot of time on their hands. Okay. So anyway, hopefully that answered the question for you, Cyrus. Let's move on to the next one. This one is from Xue. I think I'm pronouncing that right. XUE. It's Mandarin, I think. Anyway, he donates 0.0256476 XMR. Thank you very much for that. And he says, I've heard that you should never invest ideologically. I certainly feel that I have been burned before because I was excited about a project. Would you invest into things like Monero and gold primarily because you believe in it long term, or isn't unwise? Yeah, so when it comes to investing, I think that's actually a pretty good adage to follow. Don't invest just based on your ideology. And the reason for that is because we live in clown world. And I guess like the best investor is somebody who uses that to their advantage. I'm terrible at this. I'm just going to be completely upfront with you. With my like investments, I just like invest for the long term. I'm like somewhat boomerish in this kind of opinion. I don't do any like essentially gambling. Like I'm not doing like shorts or whatever. Like that's too much work for me. What I like to do is just kind of buy something that I believe in for long-term kind of holding purposes. So, for example, like tech stocks, I'll buy, and kind of like just general like blue chip stocks is generally what I'm investing in if I am investing. Now, that being said, if you want like a riskier investment, something with a lot more volatility, I think Monero is definitely like a good investment from that perspective, right? It is probably undervalued relative to other cryptocurrencies. So you have that ideological kind of like background as well as the potential gains. I think that's totally fine. Here's a little counter argument though, that may change your frame of thinking. Obviously you're saying investing, and what do you mean by investing is investing money, but what about time, right? How do you invest your time? And from an ideological perspective, you can absolutely invest your time in Monero and not feel burned by it if it doesn't, perform well in the markets. And this is really where I'm at. Like, if Monero went to zero tomorrow, I won't feel like I wasted my time. Well, maybe a little bit because, I've made videos specifically about Monero. So yeah, okay, I would feel like I wasted my time, I guess, but I wouldn't feel like it was for a bad cause, right? I'm here for the idealistic reasons of peer-to-peer digital cash. And so with me investing my time in it, we're moving things forward, all else equal. And I feel like I'm a part of that because I'm voicing that opinion that's pushing back against Moonboyism, right? We need to like really voice that because that's the biggest problem facing cryptocurrency today. So if we're talking about investing, invest your time in Monero, invest your time in projects that you believe in, because sure, you might not get a return on your time investment, but who knows? Like by you being there, you're networking, you're having fun, right? You're really doing something you're passionate about. And this is why I preach so much about being an Anti Moonboy. Just you want to be here for the fun of it, right? So I do also want to comment though on your question. You mentioned gold. That's actually a pretty safe investment. So I'm not sure why you would say that it's bad for an ideological reason. Maybe because it's not as profitable relative to other things. Is that what you're saying? Because that would make sense. Yeah, gold is very safe, except lately it's ripping. Right. I do buy gold and silver for what it's worth. I do like my boomer rocks. And it's kind of funny. Like my boomer rocks are like outperforming like most of the things that I do have. Hilariously enough, I was stacking gold at like 1,600 and I'm like, dang, this actually came out pretty good. Right. Yeah, I like gold and silver just because it's an element. It is purely fungible. Right. It is, really the ideal circumstance of digital cash is to be like gold and silver, but electronic. That should be our mindset. With gold and silver, finite amount. Yes, there's mining, but it's a smooth inflation. Like a lot of the things we talk about with Monero, you can just apply to gold. And a lot of people who hold Bitcoin feel the same way about how they view gold. I think like as a hedge, like gold and silver is just phenomenal just to like buy every so often and just have something for, rainy day savings if you do ever need to cash it out, or you can just secure your wealth in it. And that's kind of what I like. But then again, you can also get riskier and you can buy like junior mining stocks, which, are very, very risky comparatively. So anyways, to answer your question, to summarize, I guess, you should always invest your time ideologically. Money-wise, though, it's obviously risky, and the the volatility of Monero reflects that, right? So if you want to take that risk, by all means, go ahead. But if it goes to zero, you have to be comfortable with that, because Monero is something that could go to zero tomorrow. So just keep that in mind. All right, so those are the super chats. Again, xmrchat.com/Xenu. You can donate, and I'll read your question and respond to it on the air. Likewise. Okay, so let's do some channel updates real quick. A couple days ago, I was on Monerotalk. I was interviewed for like an hour and 40 minutes, around that time frame. It was a great interview. Me and Doug talked about a lot of different things. It was funny. I think Doug was he was pretty fixated on me telling him that he's not a Moonboy. he was like, okay, but listen, I want the price of Monero to go up, but I am not a Moonboy. Like, he kept kind of saying that in like different ways. Doug is not a Moonboy, in my opinion. He kind of is, but not in a bad way. You know, he really truly loves Monero, and you know, he's done so much for Monero and like interviewing people and kind of documenting the growth of Monero. There's really nobody who's done it better than Doug. But really, the question to ask somebody to really tell if they're like a full-fledged Moonboy or not is, and I asked this to Doug on the air, and he responded correctly, but I asked him, like, you know, if I were to guarantee you a 10x right now in Monero, however, I would have to sacrifice some of its privacy features, would you say yes? And the thing is, pretty much all Moonboys would say, yes, I would sacrifice that. And that's a problem. This is a fundamental issue with Moonboyism, is that they will bend the knee to regulations if it guarantees a price pump. And we've seen that time and time again. You know, we've seen that with Bitcoin, where it just slowly has been neutered over time. Like, if you went back like a decade, okay, you went back a decade and just showed the average Bitcoiner the average discussion happening today within Bitcoin, they'd probably be pretty shocked. I think a lot of them would be. But like, it's slowly just become more and more sterile over time, where now it's just like commonplace to not really care if financial institutions are collaborating with Bitcoin Core. It's like expected now. Things have totally changed. Like, a person like Michael Saylor is like heretical. If you go back and look at like early Bitcoin talk forums, like, this guy Saylor is just a complete doofus. And the fact that he's worshipped as this like savant is freaking mind-blowing. But this is what's happened over time to the quality of discussion in Bitcoin. It's just gone really into the gutter. So anyway, what was I talking about? Yeah, so Monerotalk was really good. We had a good discussion. So check that out. I will hopefully remember to put a link in the description. If not, just look up Monerotalk on YouTube. You probably are already subscribed to it if you're listening to me. And check that out, because we had a great discussion there. Other things, I did not work at all on Darknet Maximalism over the past week. I was just really busy with stuff. But t-shirts should be arriving, I think, like today. I have to go to the P.O. box and check that out. They should be, I think they're in transit right now. So once I get the t-shirts, hopefully next week I will announce my t-shirt giveaway. Might be the week after. And it's going to be really fun. There's 75 t-shirts. 2 will be given away for free. And it's going to be one of those situations where you like and retweet the tweet, sweepstakes. And if you win, you win. If you lose, sorry. One of those things. But it's going to be fun. And the t-shirt designs look pretty sick. So I'm really excited about that. So our leadoff story this week, and something we're going to be diving into in a lot of detail, is the latest in the Department of Justice and their fight against cryptocurrency exchanges and mixers. It was announced this week that the Department of Justice sent out a memo, and in the memo, they are telling their staff to ignore crypto exchanges and mixers, essentially saying that it's kind of a waste of time. Now, the news hit Twitter, and a lot of people immediately celebrated. And for good reason. Like, it's a step in the right direction. We're seeing this administration, they appear to be more relaxed, right? They appear to be, much more calm, much more observant of the free market. But I think that's a bunch of crap, to be honest with you. Back to the interview I had with Doug. Doug referred to me as being black-pilled, and I do kind of agree with that. I am, I guess, a little black-pilled when it comes to viewing cryptocurrency and how the state views cryptocurrency, because I just assume the worst. And the thing is, I did read the memo, and it is saying that they don't want people to waste their time. Or when I say people, I mean the people working at the Department of Justice. They don't want them to waste their time on things they shouldn't be wasting their time on. The problem, though, is they're not really describing in detail what exactly they don't want to waste their time on. Or, in this case, with Samourai Wallet and Tornado Cash, they're kind of leaving it up in the air as to what they can be targeting. And really the big problem that I have with what they're saying is they're keeping it up in the air as to whether or not Samourai Wallet and Tornado Cash, by virtue of them knowing that criminals were using their service, that they broke the law because of that. And that is really the crux of their argument. You see Samourai Wallet and Tornado Cash, they profited off of this, okay? They made a profit. And because they made a profit, and because they knew that their service was being used, to launder funds or, to be used on darknet markets like with Samourai Wallet, because they knew that, they're breaking the law. Now, I think this is ridiculous for many different reasons. The primary one is very often, public services are used for illegal services, or illegal reasons, I should say. Now, for example, with the darknet, right? When you're selling drugs to somebody on the internet, you're actually sending it using the United States Postal Service. And the thing is, the United States Postal Service, they understand this is happening. They know this is happening. And they are making a profit off of this, right? So are they making a profit off of the drug trade? Using this argument, you would say, yes, they are. It's kind of a faulty argument, but it's an argument nonetheless. And the backdoor here is an argument against open source, technology, and especially open source privacy technology. It's a constant cat and mouse game. It's a constant struggle, really, and we can't give them anything. We can't give them an inch. We have to keep pushing back. So, anyways, there's this story. It's an op-ed piece written by Lola Leitz at The Rage, and it's about the crypto memo. We're going to take a read of this and kind of analyze it. So, it says here, the Deputy Attorney General has asked the Department of Justice to stop targeting developers for the conduct of their users. But the issued memo appears to deliberately leave the door wide open to do exactly that. The Attorney General's memo is widely celebrated throughout the media, but it seems to lack significant clarity on what the developers are protected from. What constitutes knowing and willful offenses for non-custodial or mutable software, as well as what constitutes other means of transferring and transmitting funds under Section 1960, continues to be undefined. The subsection used to charge both Samourai Wallet and Tornado Cash developers is specifically, named as out of scope. So, really here, again, what they're charging Samourai Wallet and Tornado Cash for is a gray area. And that is really the topic of discussion. So the Department of Justice coming out and saying, hey, don't waste your time on things, that's fine. But they're still wasting their time on this thing because this is a key point that they're trying to make, that Samourai Wallet and Tornado Cash, they fall under what should be targeted. And obviously we disagree with that. So moving on, it says, last night, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche issued a memo to Department of Justice employees titled Ending Regulation by Prosecution, calling the digital assets industry critical to the nation's economic development and innovation. Citing the president's executive order to strengthen American leadership in digital financial technology, Blanche states that clarity and certainty regarding enforcement policy are essential to supporting a vibrant and inclusive digital economy and innovation in digital assets. The Justice Department has been tasked with protecting and promoting the ability of individual citizens and private sector entities alike to to access and use for lawful purposes open public blockchain networks without persecution. To fulfill these tasks, the department will no longer target virtual currency exchanges, mixing and tumbling services, and offline wallets for the acts of their end users or unwitting violations of regulations. So that's the announcement. The announcement comes out. Everyone's super happy, right? And then there's people kind of, expanding on this, saying, well, we should free Samourai wallet now, right? We should free Roman with Tornado Cash. Roman with Bitcoin Fog, the other Roman. He should also be freed, right? Why aren't they being freed? And that's exactly my point. If this memo is really damning, all of those cases should be thrown out right now. But they're not being. So why? Right? Why aren't these cases being thrown out? Why is it that the Department of Justice is giving Tornado Cash a hard time right now? Because they are. They're playing all these lawyer games, right? They're trying to get them to reveal their witnesses prior to when they're supposed to, or disclose, I should say. Why are they doing that? Why are they playing games, and why are they keeping this legal action ongoing, right? It's because they believe that maybe they don't even believe it, but what they want is to say, Samourai Wallet and Tornado Cash, you guys were committing crimes because you were offering privacy. That's what they want. So this is a typical fashion where, they come out and say that we are here to, protect people's privacy rights while also attacking our privacy rights. It's, don't follow what they say, follow what they do. And we saw this too. We're talking about stable coins, right? Remember a couple weeks ago, we had the Looney Lummis discussion, the First Digital Assets Committee. The entire time, they're just talking about stable coins, right? And the thing is, this comes only a couple weeks after Trump declared that CBDCs were gone. And anyone with half a brain cell can tell that, okay, they just rebranded, right? They changed CBDCs and now they're just saying, okay, we're going to use stable coins. It's the same freaking thing. Right. Anyways, moving on. It says here, ACINQ, the company behind the popular non-custodial Lightning wallet Phoenix Wallet, which announced their withdrawal from U.S. markets in light of the Samourai Wallet prosecution due to regulatory uncertainty, announced yesterday that it will be returning its services to U.S. markets following the memo, writing that the company welcomes the clarity it provides for developers and operators of Bitcoin software. However, the statements made by the Deputy Attorney General appear far from establishing the desired clarity regarding the liability of software developers that the media is advertising. And that is the crux of this article. So what are they talking about? It says here, devs aren't liable for user behavior under certain circumstances. The above statements made in the memo are contingent on a certain set of priorities articulated by the Deputy Attorney General. First, looking at charges for unlicensed money transmission under Section 1960, as well as violations of the Bank Secrecy Act, unwitting violations of regulations appears to moot the statements on regulation violations made. Merriam-Webster defines the term unwitting as unknowing, unintentional, or not done on purpose. But both Section 1960 and the Bank Secrecy Act require the prosecution to prove mens rea, meaning a guilty mind, to bring charges against entities or individuals. Under existing law, the Department of Justice has never been able to charge unwitting regulation violations in the first place. Taking the prosecution of both Samourai Wallet and Tornado Cash developers as an example, in which the government argues that the parties knowingly and willfully violated regulations, it seems unclear what the memo would change regarding such allegations. Second, similar to statements made last week by the Treasury, the Deputy Attorney General asked the Department of Justice to prioritize cases involving use of digital assets in furtherance of unlawful conduct by cartels, transnational criminal organizations, foreign terrorist organizations, and specially designated global terrorists, saying that such groups were increasingly turning towards digital assets. So therefore, the question becomes, who does the Department of Justice consider to be an individual who uses digital assets in furtherance of criminal conduct? And, this again, does this mean Samourai Wallet and Tornado Cash fall under this? That's the question. And lastly, the memo carves out an exception for Section 1960, subsection B1C, stating that the subsection is outside the scope of this policy. And it says here, subsection C deems 1960 to apply to offenses which otherwise involve the transportation or transmission of funds that are known to the defendant to have been derived from a criminal offense or are intended to be used to promote or support unlawful activity. As Amanda Tuminelli of the DeFi Education Fund points out on X, it is this subsection that is at the heart of the Storm and Samourai Wallet cases. In both prosecutions, the government paints Tornado Cash and Samourai Wallet developers to knowingly and willfully have operated a service used by money launderers and terrorists to enrich themselves financially. To make their case, prosecutors cite Samourai Wallet marketing material in which the developers advertise their service to criminal actors. In the case of Tornado Cash, prosecutors cite internal chat records in which the developers discuss criminal funds flowing through their service. And, Samourai Wallet, there's also the DMs on Twitter, right, where T-Dev was caught, saying that he knows that people who are using Samourai Wallet participate on darknet markets, right? So, really what this news is, I think a lot of people misinterpreted it, and they kind of jumped to the conclusion that the Department of Justice is on our side. It doesn't really appear to be the case. It appears that this is very much still a battle, and that they're still pursuing people that they think are committing crimes, and from their point of view. And from their point of view, Samourai Wallet and Tornado Cash were committing crimes. Why do we know that? Because they haven't dropped the cases. And they are pursuing them based on the fact that they think that they were aware that crimes were being committed using their service, therefore they were committing a crime. So really what we're doing now is we're looking towards the future, and that future, right, that's going to have these results from these cases as precedent. So it is super important that we win these cases. I don't like winning things through courts, but this is what we have to do, right? We have to win these cases. Otherwise, we have to keep fighting them, because, obviously it's ridiculous to say, your service, open source software service is being used for crime. Well, a lot of things are used for crime. To imprison somebody for that is ridiculous, but here we are. Okay, so let's jump around now to some other news. So this week was another up and down week for markets, with the rhetoric from Trump being, I don't even know how you would describe it, schizophrenic. Yeah. I don't know if you guys have figured it out yet, but this is going to be the market dump and pump story of the year, where, now things are going to calm down maybe for a month or two, but then the 3-month delay is going to be reached again, and then markets are going to plummet again. At least that's what I see that's going to happen. Who knows, man? We could wake up tomorrow and China will agree to some tariff deal and everything will be totally fine again. I really don't have a horse in this race, nor do I particularly care. But we were talking about boomer rocks before, and it's nice to see gold doing well. We don't really talk about price on this channel, but I do have a soft spot for gold and silver as well. And that's pretty cool. It's funny too, because obviously Peter Schiff is one of our favorite talking heads. Whether you love him or hate him, he's entertaining to say the least. He's always tweeting out at Michael Saylor. And it's peak Schiff euphoria right now. I mean, man, I kind of hope gold continues pumping just to see him dabbing on Bitcoiners. It's wildly entertaining listening to that guy. He's finally right for investing in gold instead of Bitcoin. But hey, can't hate him, man. You gotta just love it. So yeah, let's get to some other news. And Binance, they dumped Firo. That happened a couple days ago, and Binance is apparently slowly winding down their support of anything with privacy. And I had talked about this a week or two ago, where Zcash is on their short list for removal. And yeah, I mean, a lot of Zcashers were freaking out. I made the point that, hey, you shouldn't depend on centralized exchanges, and if you do that, you're kind of fraudulent. whatever. We already talked a lot about that, so I'm not going to repeat what I already said. But here we see a project similar to Zcash, Firo, who did bend the knee to government. And they got delisted, and the price got nuked, which is exactly what you would expect from a project that has gone out of their way to bend the knee to government. And this is kind of opening fanfare for what could happen to Zcash, because likewise, they are so dependent on endorsement from exchanges, from the financial institutions, from government, right? Any sort of thing going against that, it's a huge strike against how they perform in the markets. So yeah, let's check Firo right now. Actually, I don't have it pulled up. Let's see. Type this into Google. We'll look at the 1 year. Yeah, they were at, it looks like they were hovering around like $1.10 for a while. And now they're at 43 cents after the announcement. So they tanked pretty damn hard there. And I mean, like I said, Zcash is in a very similar circumstance. You know, it's not going to pump after delisting. And I mean, we saw this with Monero too, where Monero, I mean, you're gonna find a lot of people who like Monero who don't like centralized exchanges, and yet Monero dumped hard once Binance delisted, right? Dumped really, really hard, and I mean, it took Monero a long time to recover from that. And this is people who generally, if you ask the average person who likes Monero, they will say, yeah, we really don't care about centralized exchanges. And in that case, it's still dumped really hard. So we'll see if Binance continues delisting. Maybe they'll hold on to Zcash because of the influence from certain benefactors over there. I guess that's what they have to hope for. But yeah, Firo, they got wrecked. I don't know if there's any other quote-unquote privacy coins out there on Binance. But if they do end up being delisted, yeah, they're probably going to dump as well. So I have here a tweet from our favorite, Joel. He had a good tweet, though. He said, according to Bitcoin Visuals, Lightning Network channels and nodes have hit an almost 4-year low. Same with capacity in Bitcoin terms, and even in fiat terms, it's down this year. All while we've seen market all-time highs, attention all-time highs, regulatory certainty all-time highs. And yeah, this is really the story, right? We've been talking a lot about this on Anti Moonboy. Lightning Network just isn't being used. It is completely fraudulent. People don't care about Lightning Network. And I don't really blame the average Bitcoiner for not caring about Lightning Network, because consider how they're being sold on Bitcoin. The sales pitch for Bitcoin right now is buy as much as you can and hold it as long as you can. Okay, so if you're telling that to somebody who's new to Bitcoin, and then you say, hey, you want to use Lightning Network, what do you think they're going to say? They're going to say, no. I'm investing for my future generations. I need to buy as much Bitcoin as possible. That's what they're thinking. They don't want to use some freaking Lightning Network, right? And that's what we're saying. And also, to expand off that, then we saw empty blocks last week, right? We saw these empty blocks, Bitcoin usage continuing to trend downwards. And this is problematic because Bitcoin needs usage. And that's how its fee model is based. So there's a lot of bad indicators right now that are being kind of hand-waved away. And part of the reason they're being hand-waved away is because Bitcoin and its purpose has been neutered, and it is now just a store of value vehicle. It's an investment vehicle. That's really all it is. It is a tech stock. And that is, against Lightning Network, right? Who cares about Lightning Network? I would rather have Lightning Network be used and adopted, even though I think long-term it will become centralized. If Lightning Network was actually being used, I would have so much more respect for it. I mostly shit on Lightning Network, right? And the reason I am shitting on Lightning Network is because the usage is so bad. It's just very, very low. In addition to that, too, everything's custodial these days, except for a couple wallets. Or if they were or non-custodial, I should say, they are becoming custodial over time, or they're endorsing custodial projects, such as with Zeus, endorsing Cashew that happened like a week or two ago. Like, what are you guys doing, right? But that's what we're saying. A slow trend towards that type of endorsement of custodial solutions. And that's what this tweet isn't saying with this decline in Bitcoin usage, is that it's also becoming much more centralized. Much more centralized. And that's a problem. As something becomes more centralized, you then start to strip away the idealism, right? So with Lightning Network, it was told, we're going to have the most private thing ever. Well, what's being used, right? You talk to Peter Todd or Super Testnet, and they talk about, theoretically, Lightning Network is the most private thing ever. Okay, well, how is it being used? It's being used with custodial options. And that is bad. Okay, that's just shit. That is not what you want. Don't look at the specific underlying technology. Look at how it's being used. How is it being used? With custodial services. And that doesn't trend down over time. It gets worse over time. And if it's bad now, imagine what it's going to be like, 5 years from now, if Lightning Network still is an option. So, I don't know, man. Let's move on. The IRS broker rule is officially dead. Yeah, we had talked about this a couple weeks ago. Basically, the broker rule would have made non-custodial, so no KYC swap services and non-custodial services. It would have the rule would have been an attack on those sorts of things. So this is a big victory. The rule was typical government overreach from one department. They kind of put this new blanket definition on what a broker is, and they were including just like open source technology and like, services and stuff like that. And thankfully, cooler heads prevailed, and we won. And this is really what we have to do, right? We have to push back against every so often you're going to get some ridiculous government overreach, and you push back. And even if it takes lobbyism, it's what we have to do. We have no other choice, right? Or we just protest and just continue using that software anyways, which we would do anyways. So that's some good news. Next up, we got our weekly Zcash bashing. I'm not going to spend much time on this because, I have been bashing Zcash a lot lately, and frankly, I'm getting kind of tired of it. But Zcash, their official Twitter, recently tweeted, "Don't sacrifice privacy for convenience." And Fluffy Pony, he tweeted, nice clapback. He said, "Is this satire?" But I mean, listen, Zcash is completely based on convenience. They're based on compliancy. That's why they have transparent transactions. And if you look at how many transactions each day that are transparent, it's pretty eye-opening. And as usual, you're going to have the nerds say, "Oh, well, actually, we're the most private cryptocurrency because we have X, Y, and Z." And it's like, okay, fine, but how is it being used, right? I think you can really, define my viewpoints of privacy with that statement. How is it being used? It cuts out all the bullcrap, all the surrounding, pissing contest of, well, we're more private than you. No, we're more private than you. Okay, well, how is your cryptocurrency being used? Zcash, it ain't being used. Into the trash it goes. Okay, that's it. I don't know what to tell you. Okay, it might be used in the future. Okay, well, that's good. That's fine. You can keep dreaming for that. Maybe it is being used in the future. I don't know. But how is it being used today? It isn't being used? Okay, bye-bye. That's it, right? And anyways, they chose the option that was convenient for compliance. That's their convenience. And in doing so, they sacrificed their privacy. So this statement, "Don't sacrifice privacy for convenience," makes no sense if you look at what Zcash actually is and how it's being used. So yeah, I'm done talking about Zcash. Let's move on. Let's talk about some Monero stuff. Okay. So the big one, I actually missed this last week. I am sorry, Cake Wallet, because I should have covered this. But Cake Wallet has unveiled background sync. I have not tried this myself, but one of the problems that Monero wallets have had on mobile up until this point is background sync. There's technical reasons for it, but basically it's very annoying, and I've run into this problem myself where I had to access funds in the Monero wallet, and the sync was taking so long, and I couldn't have it running like in the background or whatever. So I just said, screw it. I basically just opened the wallet on my CLI and then got the funds that way, because like I wasn't going to wait for that crap. And so yeah, this happens to a lot of people, and it's very, very annoying. Like if you don't touch your mobile wallet that often, you can get burned by having to wait for sync time. So anyways, Cake Wallet has fixed this. This is a huge UX victory. Shout out to Cake Wallet. And I'm really happy to see this because, yeah, any UX victory is a victory for the project of Monero, especially if it does it correctly, right? And Cake Wallet is basically doing things correctly. Now, it's not a perfect wallet by any means. I would recommend, the CLI, Feather Wallet, I would recommend as like being very, very good wallets without really any problems. Well, maybe some problems here and there with it not being on Tor automatically, etc. But, Cake Wallet does things in a pretty good way, okay? And in this way, they are dominating with this, at least in the mobile wallet space. They are now the front runner because of this, in my opinion. Having background sync is a pretty big deal. So hopefully we get this in Monerocha soon, as well as the other mobile wallets that are out there. Next up, we have Changelly. They had a Reddit, I think it was an AMA or something, and they basically said that they have no idea how Monero is traced. This is what they say. Presumably, they're talking about KYC and tracing and things like that, because this is the statement they had. It says, indeed, these transactions initially fell subject to KYC, but that only happens when it's flagged by the risk scoring system, usually meaning a larger picture behind the funds. And in this case, for good reason too, the funds are connected to illicit activities, and it's a clear attempt to launder all these mentioned coins through the untraceable XMR chain. We take AML very seriously and ask everyone to do the same in hopes of preserving the crypto community and the sphere as a whole. Our AML KYC compliance department works with the certified tools and agencies and intends to return the funds to their rightful owner. So yeah, this sounds like a situation where somebody did, maybe swap into, another cryptocurrency and their funds got held, which happens a lot in these coin swap services. If you're using a coin swap service, make sure you read the privacy policy. Make sure you do a little research on that, because a lot of these services can freeze your funds, and you can't do anything unless you prove who you are, which is obviously not what you want if you're using a non-KYC service. If there's a KYC third party that your non-KYC service is using. Truckador actually shows you which services do require KYC versus which services do not. I imagine other swap sites also do the same, but always be careful about that. And don't send a lot of cryptocurrency if you are swapping it. Because it will be flagged if it's a large amount, And remember, always pay your taxes. Always pay your taxes. Don't do anything illegal. I gotta add that in there because my federal agent's probably listening to this program. I'm not telling people to do illegal things. I just don't want them to deal with their funds being frozen. I mean, come on. I'm swapping funds. I'm a big boy. Okay. Let me swap funds how I want to swap funds. I don't see why we shouldn't be allowed to do that, right? Craziness. Now, anyway, with Changelly, they are subject to AML and KYC, and they are subject to that so they can continue to exist. And if they stop doing that, they will be targeted by the law. And I've talked about this a lot. I really do believe that these CoinSwap services are not going to exist in the not-so-distant future unless they become fully KYC compliant. But they are obligated at least to provide information if they are subpoenaed, and they do provide that information. And in the case with Monero, I mean, once someone swaps into Monero, it's very hard to continue tracing them. But we have seen examples of this. You can check out Attack of the Poison Outputs. I go into a lot more detail of this. The incognito market case is probably the best example of this. But they can just use timing analysis among other things. And even though they might not even be looking at a ring signature, they can still trace Monero if they look at the amounts being sent, they match the timings of it, etc. So, Changelly, they are absolutely part of that, where they are, saving information, saving your IP address, saving your user agent, and if they are subpoenaed, they will share that information with law enforcement, including the transaction amounts and all transaction details. And this is already happening. So I don't agree that XMR is untraceable, but it is obviously being used to be untraceable. And because of that, it is getting a lot of attention. And here you have, a CoinSwap service saying, hey, listen, we have no idea what's going on here. And I firmly believe that too. I think like the people who are working for these swap sites, they're not experts on blockchain surveillance and chain analytics. They're kind of just like doing what they're being told. And it's probably becoming a headache to have something like Monero being listed. Although to be fair, because they do have Monero, they're probably getting a lot of fees out of that because there's demand for using Monero. People aren't going out of their way to swap into Dogecoin. Okay, they're going out of their way to swap into Monero because Monero is actually being used, as we've seen over and over again. I mean, this is why I talk about darknet markets so much. People actually need it. There's a quote actually that Doug clipped. I'm happy Doug clipped it from the Monerotalk interview because I thought this quote was really good. When I said it, I was like, oh yeah, that's going in the manifesto. But what I said was like, people don't wake up in the morning and say like, I need Litecoin right now. I really need some Litecoin. They don't do that. They wake up and they say, I really need Monero, right? That's because they buy drugs on the darknet. They need Monero. That's what they're like. I need to pick up some Monero. You're not getting that with Dogecoin or Litecoin. You're getting that with a cryptocurrency that's actually being used for a purpose, like gas for a car, right? Other Monero news here. This is kind of in progress happening. But like how Monero has overtaken Bitcoin on darknet markets, and it's happened over a period of time, we are now starting to see Haveno taking over Bisq in terms of usage. It only took like a year. It's all it really took, but the momentum is building. More and more people are using Haveno, and recently, by trade volume, Haveno was actually higher than Bisq. The switch is happening, but right before our eyes. And Bisq, they made their choice. They could have had Monero be a base currency, but they're maxis. And I think that they will eventually have to switch. And I hope they do, too, because we need more, peer-to-peer exchanges. But they decided to be still Bitcoin-based. Fine. We moved on. We made Haveno, and look what's happening. It is now slowly and organically growing. And this time next year, you will see Haveno routinely above Bisq in trade volume. That's how this works. Once you onboard someone to Haveno, why would they go back to Bisq, right? They're going to just keep using Monero. It's safer. And this is what we've seen with darknet markets. It's really a reflection of that. During the transition period from Bitcoin to Monero, it was slow. But once you learn about like Monero, why would you go back to using Bitcoin? I mean, you might if you're being lazy, but generally people, once they learn about Monero, it's like, oh, okay, this works. That's easy. Haveno, it's basically exactly like Bisq. There's a few technical differences, but pretty much the same thing. So anyway, that's really great news. Love to see it. And we've been talking about the growth of Haveno, really since the beginning of this program. And we're seeing just like over and over again, just new all-time high of volume, more users, more listings, And I don't really think that this is a trend that's going to go back down. I mean, maybe because we are in a quote-unquote bull run, like maybe we're going to have higher volume relative to next year. But I think in terms of market share of peer-to-peer usage, Haveno is going to keep growing relative to everything else. And for what it's worth, we also don't have Samourai yet. And that can also really add a lot of liquidity of Monero into the markets, which will be very interesting to see. All right, last story this week, we're going to be talking about Ross Ulbricht. He announced the other day that he is going to be making his first public appearance and speech since his release from prison at the Bitcoin conference in Las Vegas. It will be happening in May, late May of 2025. He will be going out there and talking. Yeah, I mean, this is a big story, and, obviously Ross being freed was a huge deal, and especially a huge deal for anybody out there supportive of free open source software, and especially libertarians in general with the drug war and all that stuff. The one thing I want to say about this, though, is that I think a lot of people take Ross and they kind of put this image over Ross. This is something I've seen a lot, where people kind of view him as this kind of like this Robin Hood type of figure, where he fought against the government and, now he's come out on top, right? And they kind of project who they believe this guy is over who he is. Now, I don't know who Ross is. You don't know who Ross is. None of us do except for him, right? And maybe, his family, of course, right? But the thing is, I actually went back and I listened to his last speech he gave. This was at Bitcoin in 2021. Now, if you haven't done that, I highly recommend you do. It's only about 20 minutes, and it is very emotional. He's basically calling in from prison, and it's really fucked up. He's very emotional, he's very remorseful, and he makes it very clear that he did not want this, and he regrets making the Silk Road, and he's very much, against the idea of ever having contributed to this. And it's kind of ironic because, a lot of people, at least in the crypto anarchist kind of, community, a lot of people look up to what Ross did. And Ross himself kind of says, no, I don't want that attention. I don't want to be seen by this. So it's kind of an interesting mix of people not really understanding who Ross is as a person, and also kind of projecting their values onto him as well. So this will be Ross's first speech, and I'm looking forward to it. I know a lot of other people are, because he's a very smart guy. He seems to be very bright, and what will be interesting to see is how he kind of deals with this, because already, the other day, he tweeted out support for Roger Ver, and this was a cognitive dissonance moment, right, with the Bitcoiners. They were like, what's happening here? Why are you supporting Roger Ver? And I think Ross is going to be very neutral when it comes to crypto. Now, again, this is me talking, so we haven't heard him talk yet, but I'm not expecting him to go full on maxi, but if he does, he gets a pass. he gets a pass. I don't really give a shit. He can do what he wants. But something like this, I want to say that it's something that you got to mark your calendars for, because it's going to be a really big event. And I really think that what he says will have a lot of impact, because he really is on the Mount Rushmore of Bitcoin and of cryptocurrency, if you really think about it. I would put him on that Mount Rushmore, because he was really the one who lit the match and made Bitcoin feared. Or I should say, he made peer-to-peer cash feared. That's really what he did. And that fear, that's what gives it power. And that's really what we're trying to preserve. Whether he realizes it or not, that is his contribution. And if it wasn't him, it probably would have been some other guy. I don't think Ross was the only person thinking about things like this, but he was the first. And just by virtue of that, he gets the credit. So anyways, we're happy he's freed. This is going to be a big event, and we will be looking forward to that. So anyways, that's the episode. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for listening. If you, again, want to donate, xmrchat.com/Xenu. You can also check out all my content at antimoonboy.com. See you guys next week.